Coming to you live from Fort Wayne, Indiana, join your host, Marika Hamilton, as we explore all aspects of health and well-being on this episode of Stealth Health Strategies.
Hi, I'm Marika Hamilton, founder of Dealing with Healing, and today I have a very special guest with me. Corinne McElroy from Eugene, Oregon is a friend of mine that I find she's just a fascinating woman. She has her own company by the name of Edge of Change, and her specialty is in helping people develop as leaders in a corporate setting. And I find this really, really fascinating because, part of me thinks that all of us have a leader in us that needs to be developed. And Corinne, what do you think? Do you think that every single person is a leader in their own way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The one thing and the reason when you said, working in the corporate setting, and I absolutely believe that every person is a leader. They're leading in some way. Women at home taking care of children, men that are staying home taking care of our children. Being a parent is a leadership. Out there in the community is leadership. I think the reason that I love working with people in business is because, to me, they have people underneath them and they have such a higher impact. They're hitting so many more people at one time is why I chose that particular arena to play in.
If you had to choose one thing, what's one thing that's either underrated or overrated in terms of a particular leadership skill?
The first thing that comes to mind when I think of overrated is something that I particularly have fought with leadership for a very long time, and that's leaders feeling that we need to be perfect, that we need to know all the answers, that we need to do it alone. I think that is so overrated and so misunderstood, and something that I fight with all the time. Something that's underutilized is really, truly understanding what our impact is as a leader, the communication that we have, the style of our own leadership, how we show up. I think that's totally underrated.
So what's one of the first things you'll do to help somebody? Let's say I've come into an organization and I've kind of worked my way up. Having a business of our own, we understand that just necessarily because someone comes in at a lower level and they're a good employee doesn't necessarily mean to say they're going to be a good manager or a good leader in other aspects. So, it's obvious that we have to put some training into them to sort of expand their thinking and their horizons. When you work with somebody in an organization like that has great skill sets, they're very proficient and competent at what they do, but perhaps, their management skills are off or their leadership skills are off, where's a good starting place?
That is probably one of the biggest things is that people are good in what they do as far as the technical part of what they do. And then they get, put in a position where they're in now, leadership, and they have people underneath them that they're having to work with. And there's two parts of any organization, whether it's working with a team or working with a company, working with a whole organization, is you have to have the skill set as far as in the relationship side and then in the technical side. You have to have both of them for it to truly be successful. And I agree, the relationship side is really where I play the most in because that's the side that a lot of times, and we call it emotional intelligence, social intelligence, whatever, but the idea is that we are not trained in that area. We're not trained in school to how to do that, how to work with people, how to really become in that relationship. So that's the area that I start them with is how will you support other people? How will you truly listen? How will you show respect as a leader? How will you communicate? How are you going to have that caring and empathy for others? Because with that type of a skill set, you're absolutely building trust with people. Then bringing in those different layers of trust for consistency and integrity and the motivation that's involved. And then absolutely it brings out the ability because you still as a leader need to have that skill, the knowledge, the experience, and the competency. And you're also training other people and mentoring them to do the same. But bringing in all those layers of trust and really taking a look at how do you build trust as a leader, what is your impact around that, are absolutely the areas that I work with any leader, regardless of how long they've been in leadership. If they're brand new or they've been a leader for 20 years, it doesn't matter.
What would you say in terms of looking at the general clients that you work with and people who are new clients coming into your business? How many of these folks already have an interest in self-introspection or personal development, and how important is that commitment to kind of grow yourself outside of work? How important is that in terms of getting results in developing yourself as a leader?
As far as the people that come to me and working with me, probably 80% of them are already very conscious about leadership. I think that's why they're searching out and looking for a leadership coach to work with. They're already people that understand the value of being a great leader. And there's someone that's always looking to how they can actually grow. So that I would say probably is 80% of the client. 20% absolutely are people that maybe their HR department is sending them to me. And still at the same time, for them to come in and work directly with me, there has to be an agreement that they are willing to grow. So in other words, even if an HR department sends me a client and I've worked with them maybe an hour or two and they just don't feel like there's someone that really wants to grow, I won't take them on as a client.
That's interesting. And not to ruffle any feathers or piss anybody off, but do you feel as though if you had to take the difference between men and women, is there, because you deal with people in very high-level leadership positions with very well-known companies, some of my favorite companies like Whole Foods, for example. I mean, I love that place. And now I find out that you also work with Michael Kors, and my daughter is dying for a pair of their boots. So kudos to you to working so hard and having such a following with really these top companies. So anyway, back to my question. When you go into organizations like this, do you get the sense that men or women, one of those sexes, is more open to the message or more open to the personal development? That's kind of a little bit of a loaded question, but we'll talk about that more after I hear your answer.
My belief system when I first got into this is that women were more open into it. Then I got into the industry, and I kept saying to myself, I really want to build a business that is around supporting women. And there's part of me that still goes that direction. I absolutely love working with women. Women are stepping into leadership more now than they ever have. But the interesting thing I have found with myself is that I work really well with men. There's a part of my personality, though, that I believe that creates that safe place for them, and I still can draw them out in a way of empathy and strength with them. So it's interesting. I have found with men, when they're in a situation where they feel safe, where they can get real, where they can get authentic and not feel judged, that they are very much and very open to taking a really honest look at themselves. I also find on the other end that women, we have a tendency of believing that we don't have a right to do this work. There's still something that holds us back that won't allow us to personally invest in ourselves the way I believe that we really ought to be doing to have that growth. It's like, well, let me spend my money over here on this other person, or let me treat them, but I don't want to treat myself. So it's kind of interesting to take a look at it. Most of the people that I do work with, for a long time it was mostly men. Now it's becoming about 60% men, 40% women right now. And I really like that balance. And I love seeing how women are stepping into leadership more, like I said, than they ever have. There's more women that are starting businesses now than ever. So yay for us.
So are you one of those women?
Absolutely.
Not in terms of starting your own business, but are you one of the women that can't or doesn't feel like they've arrived to invest in yourself to the degree that you'd like to?
I think that partly there's still a part of me that has that little back message in there. As I've gotten older, I know that I've gotten better at my ripe age of, 56 now? But there has been such a part of me that, I don't know if it's a deserving thing or if it's just that part of me that, I want to take care of you, which if you look at the industry that I'm in, it even shows up there. I'm a coach. I'm someone that's working with other people to bring out the best in who you are. And at the same time, I have my own stuff that I'm getting to work on. So it's probably why I have my own coach too, right?
Right. Well, it's really, really important that I think you do have your own coach, because I think for any of us that are in a position where we are looking to work with people and influence people, whether it's my specialty of health and personal responsibility or the corporate training that you do, the one-on-one coaching with people to help bring out the best in themselves, you got to walk the walk and you got to talk the talk. And there is none of us that really is an island unto ourselves that can really grow to your fullest potential without letting those other people in. And I think that sometimes when you allow that coaching, it's scary. You have to be vulnerable and you have to be willing to be honest. And I think for someone to make a big commitment like that in order to trust you, I think it's very reassuring that, you're also seeking your own outside mentor to push you, to help you see, your own self-limiting beliefs and how to kind of tackle those.
Absolutely. I believe so much in coaching that I have always had a coach, one way or the other. How I got in this industry was through having a coach. And while I was being coached about 6 months into it, I was feeling good about where I was, but still feeling something wasn't right. And the coach I was working with at the time said, Corinne, you're such a natural. You really ought to take a look at getting into coaching. And that's what started my journey. But I've had a coach one way or the other through the last, 7, 8 years.
I heard you say earlier that one of the leadership abilities is to be able to listen and when somebody else is talking. And I have to say, that's not a real strong suit of mine, but don't tell anybody. I find it incredibly hard sometimes to stay focused and on track, and that's something that I try to pay attention to it because I know it's a skill that I need to develop further. And part of me is, as things will pop in my head, and part of me there's a sense of urgency that says, I got to say this right now because otherwise I'm going to forget, or and it's just maybe not the best timing or not the most appropriate time to change the subject or interject something. So what are your tips in terms of how to be, I don't know how you would refer to this, but the words that coming to me right now are how to be an active listener. How do you best become an active listener?
You said the exact word is actively listening. I think it's one of the hardest things for people to do because we have so much going on in our head. We feel like we have to be so busy, especially people that are in some type of a leadership position. I have noticed that for those of us, we are very much achievers. And achievers have this little belief system that's going on is that they always have to be doing. It's really hard to slow down and to stop and just allow ourselves to even be quiet within ourselves in that moment. So I think that that's the big key right there is slowing down. I consciously have to absolutely just slow down, pause at times, slow the whole situation down to get very present. And that's really what active listening is about, is being very present in the moment. I honestly believe that it is absolutely the biggest gift that we can give another person is to be absolutely present with them, because that's not usually what we get. Think about it. We're always moving. We're always busy. We're on our emails. We're on the phone. We're texting. We're doing something. To absolutely stop long enough to be absolutely in the moment with another human being is the biggest gift that we can give them.
Wow, boy, there's a lot of truth in that, and there is so much competing for our time and our attention. It made me kind of smile because I have a 18-year-old and a soon to be 16-year-old. Oh, God help me, she's going to be driving soon. And there's sometimes I'll be talking to one of my girls, and they're looking at me politely, and they're nodding their head politely, but I recognize something in their body language and in the expression on their face, which is they are looking really through me. They are zoned out, and they are participating in the conversation to the degree in which they have to without being told they're disrespectful or being rude. And, that's probably a skill they've learned from me, to be completely honest, is the ability to be that pseudo-attentive listener across the table that's, really just kind of glazed out, if you know what I mean. And I think my training in doing that so well probably came from, my dad, because my dad's a brilliant man. He's an engineer, and his favorite joke to tell, or one he tells a lot, is that if you ask him what time it is, he's going to tell you how to build a watch. And a lot of engineers sort of suffer from that, where they give you way too much detail. And I know there's many times, even to today, my dad's in his 70s, where you ask him a question and really, you wanted sort of the Cliff Notes answer, and 15 minutes later, now you're hearing about all these details and how everything works, and you're like, oh, God, what did I get myself into? And I think... So I guess where I'm coming from with that is that I think there's a big parallel between, those early experiences that we have that condition us to, deploy those same coping mechanisms in other situations that really don't serve us. So when I'm on a call with you, I'm on an interview with you, I better damn well be paying attention to what you're saying so that I can do the next part of the interview, because otherwise, there's no service to you, and there's certainly no service to the listeners and no service to me.
And people can tell. They may not know what's going on, even when we're on the phone, because I figure 80% of the work that I do is totally on the phone, because I work with people all over the United States and even up in Canada. So 80% of the time, they're not even with me. They're on the phone. And people can feel it. They may not know what you're doing. They may not know why they're feeling the disconnect, but people can absolutely feel that you're not connected with them. And that's where you're either building trust or you're breaking trust. I had a phenomenal mentor, and it was the first time that I had ever really felt someone that was absolutely present and listening. And I can remember the first time that I felt it, and I was watching the person, and I actually started crying. He's like, what's going on, Corinne? I said, you're so present with me. I've never felt someone do that before. And it was the first time that I really felt it and understood it. And then, I love the movie Avatar.
I See You.
Yes. Oh my God. And I saw that on, I was in the movie theater on the big screen, and in that moment, and they said, I see you. And I'm like, that's what it is. When we feel connected, we feel seen. And I think that that's also the vulnerability of it, of why we don't allow each other to connect with each other. Because when we do, we're allowing ourselves to be seen.
That's really good stuff, and I love those same scenes out of Avatar. When you mentioned that name, I knew exactly what you were going to be talking about in relation to that, and that's something actually my husband and I share together, is we'll say that to each other, I see you. And what a beautiful gift to know that somebody else, my husband, for example, he can look at me and see me just truly as the essence of who Marika Hamilton is, and he loves me just the way I am. And I can be confident in that love. It's a very spiritual experience, and a pretty beautiful one. So thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. And, I want to take that back to leadership for a moment, because something you had asked me earlier, and I had talked about how leaders have a tendency of feeling that they need to be perfect, which, like I said, is something that I consciously know that I am struggling with all the time is feeling like as a leader or working in the leadership industry that there's supposed to be some kind of perfection about it. But there is that vulnerability about being seen, and then if I am seen, then I won't be liked, or they'll find out that I'm a fraud. And I find that interesting that a lot of times when I am working with leaders, people that are in very high positions, that is almost their number one fear, is to be found out that they're a fraud.
I can totally relate to that. Really, really interesting. So basically what I hear you saying is that as leaders, we feel as though we must maintain a confidence amongst the people we work with, and if we really let them see us for who we were, with all our humanness and all our vulnerabilities, that really what they're left with is viewing us as weak, and that's not a luxury that we can afford for them to view us that way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're programmed. Think about commercials. Don't let them see you sweat. I've always had that commercial in the back of my head. I can remember some of us that are not old enough to remember that commercial, but, it was a big message. Don't let them see you sweat.
This morning I was wrapping up some stuff I do with just my daily detox stuff I do for my own health, and my husband was leaving, and I had the Bible open, and I was reading something in there, and I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. I've never really read this in this way before. I said, hey, I go, listen to this. This is pretty neat. So he's standing in the doorway, and I start to read out of the Bible, which doesn't sound very exciting, and he's ready to go to work. And I look up, and he's got his little notepad, and he's reading something in his notepad, and not even looking at me. And I said, you're not listening to me. I said, I can wait till later. It's like, no, I'm listening to you. And I said, well, your body language right now is kind of telling me a whole different story. The fact that you're not looking at me and you're reading something else, call me crazy, right? And we both kind of started laughing, and I told him, I said, go ahead and do what it is you need to do, and we can talk about this later. It's not a big deal. And I think that's a really important part of not only leadership but also of communication, is for for there to be that ability that when you can't be present, that why not just say it? Why can't we just communicate that I'm distracted, I'm preoccupied, I'm thinking about this that I really need to go do right now, and it's better for me to say that, can we do this later, than it is to say, I'm listening when I'm really, reading my notepad and thinking about a completely different topic. Where do you see that in terms of the organizations that you work with, for people to actually be vulnerable and real on that level, to sometimes not communicating is communicating more than having a conversation?
So there's two things I want to say. First of all, I have a communication report that I want to send you, and have you take a look at some of the things that you're talking about. And you probably have heard these figures, and your audience, I'm sure, has heard these figures before, but it is something that we absolutely have to be conscious of. Our words are important, but at the same time, they're only 7% of the message. 7%. The tone of our voice is 38% of what the message is. So the tone is important. It's really important. And then our body language is 55% of the message. So exactly what you're talking about with your husband, noticing the body language, we're not connected to what we're saying, is where we can really have that confusing message going on. So relate it back to your other question that you said as far as how do I see that in business. We have one message going on, but all of the other signals that are going on with it are not in alignment to it. A perfect thing to say is, we have mission statements and vision statements up on our wall, but everything in our body language and the tone that we have within an organization, within our culture, are not in alignment with what the words are. So there's that confusion. There's a constant breaking of trust that's happening. That is the biggest place that I see it, is right there. And people have no idea because they're not conscious of what that really is. We talk about all the time, let's have a vision, let's have a mission. What do we do? What's our area of impact? What's our core values in our organization? And not realizing that that's the compass that you have to align everything else to. and that is the tone of your organization, the culture that's going on. Are your people and the environment conscious? Is it a positive and a productive environment? Are they all in alignment? And absolutely, that goes back to your communication in every shape, way, or form.
So do you feel like communication has gotten better or worse since the advent? Obviously, email's been around for a long time now, but also text messaging. There's no tone specified. You'd like to say that text messages are tone neutral, but they're really not, because they're up to the reader to figure out, whether there's sarcasm or whether there's just a tone of detachment or disinterest.
That is such a huge topic. I have mixed emotions with texting, internet, things like Facebook, social media, because there's that part of it that brings us closer in the connection part, but at the same time, there's a separation that happens. So, we almost have to break down each part of it. As far as in the business world, there's so much that happens in emails. And at the same time, we're so bombarded. I was with one of my clients this morning, and we were talking about, setting up what I call the power hour. In fact, I learned that from Kathleen Gage. Both of us know her and love her. And, how to really create that power hour first thing in the morning. And I was talking to him about your emails, and he's like, oh, my God, Corinne, I got 350 to 400 emails a day. He said, I can spend all day long just in my emails. He said, so, there's a lot of times that my emails go out, and some of the feedback that I get is that I'm cold, that I'm not connected. But at the same time, I'm rushing through them. I'm answering emails as fast as I can, and I feel guilty if I don't get a message to them. But at the same time, I don't have time to write these long emails. In leadership, I could really absolutely design my whole business just around communication. Everything to me breaks down to communicating. There's nothing that we do more except breathing the communicating. And sometimes I wonder about that, because if you think about the communication that you have going on in your head, the messages that you're telling yourself, is probably just as much as the verbal inwardly that we are breathing. So I'm not so sure if there's anything else we do more than communicating, but maybe breathing.
And even breathing would be a way of kind of communicating with the environment around us, right? What we're taking into our lungs and what chemicals are there, and that's really, really interesting, because I think in a very primitive level, we are hardwired to use all of our senses to communicate with everything around us just for our own survival.
So if we think about it, leadership is communicating, period.
Leadership is communicating.
Yeah, it's the way we communicate. It's the impact that we have on ourselves and on others. And going back to it, whose responsibility is it? The person that's communicating the message.
Well, I know we're kind of running out of time, but there's a couple things I wanted to ask you. First of all, where can we send our listeners that want to get a copy of this communication report? Is that something that they can get from your website?
If you email me at corinne@edgeofchange.com, Corinne@edgeofchange.com, I will always just send it to them.
Okay. Very good.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there is also another report that is on my website that people can get. So if they go to the website at www.edgeofchange.com, there's a leadership report on there that's phenomenal about our leadership style and our impact. And if they just go on and put their information on it, they'll be able to download the report for free also.
Good. Okay, well, we'll send them over to the website then. They can get some more great information from you. Now, my last question for you, Corinne, is that, you mentioned a minute ago that we are always communicating, and we probably communicate, those incessant thoughts and voices and conversations we have internally in our own head. Those are going on from even while we sleep, right? But definitely from the time we get up to the time we go to bed. What's your suggestions for someone that just wants to become a good leader to themselves? Does that make sense? communicate the best with myself? How do I get out of my own way? How do I stop my own, backgrounds and beliefs from influencing, the communication that goes on internally? Is there a pill I can take?
I know. I was just wondering that myself. I love taking a look at that saboteur conversation, that wonderful little shadowy side of ourself where we're using our skills unskillfully. And I don't know if we ever get rid of it. I've read different things on it. I've studied about the saboteur. I'm constantly taking a look at it for myself as well as, people that I work with. We have this conscious and unconscious part of us, and there's so many things that are going on in there. But I think the magic part is becoming conscious of it. I don't know if we ever get rid of it, but the idea of noticing it and managing it is more what we get to take a look at. I know personally I have certain belief systems that can pop up. I know that it has come from the way that I've been brought up or the community or even the BS stories that I've personally made up about situations. Because in reality, if you think about it, there's a situation that happens and we're constantly making up our own stories about what has happened and what the truth is. And with that, we create those stories and the belief systems out of that. So going back to what we talked about before, that leaders have to be perfect. Somewhere in my life, I have made up that story. I know that story is there. And I do know that there's parts of it that constantly are holding me back and not allowing me to get out into the world as much as I know I could be. I hate to say
Well, I can relate to that, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think feeling like a fraud is a big deal, and I think it probably affects more people than we realize. And I know that you and I have had a conversation. That's one of your challenges is that need to come across as you've got your shit together, right? I mean, that's how we want people to perceive us, and especially in our area of expertise. So what happens when there's a chink in our own armor? And, for me personally, with my health situation with a stage 3 cancer diagnosis, it's something I worry about. I worry about, the future. I worry about what may happen to my health. I'm doing everything I possibly can to give, my body the best chance to heal itself. But what if it's out of my hands, and what if, my result ultimately isn't what I'm striving for? And what messages that send to other people. So I get that completely, because, there are up days and there are down days for me, and on those, down days where I'm not feeling very secure in my health, it's hard to come across and present information for people to leave a healthier, lifestyle or a healing lifestyle for themselves, because I'm not feeling real confident just internally. It doesn't weaken the quality or the intent of my message. So in a way, there's a certain level of detachment that has to take place, because I know the information that I'm sharing is valuable and intended for somebody. I don't know who, and I don't know what result they're going to have from it. And it doesn't even matter whether or not, what my result was from it. If I feel stirred and sort of inspired to share either a supplement that I've researched or just some other information that I want to get out to people in general, I just have to trust that I'm being led to do that and led to give information that I don't know what the outcome is, because let's face it, none of us ever really know what the outcome is. Sometimes we think we do, but I just have to get out of my own way and not worry about my own personal situation, but more just go with really that soulful feel that this is the direction I feel like I'm being led. I just really wanted to share and be vulnerable with my own situation and how that sense of being a fraud sometimes comes up for me and stops me from sharing what I know will help other people. And I'm not necessarily saying that this supplement's going to help you, but when I can share and be vulnerable with others about my experiences, I know, because I hear from people, that it makes a difference to other people's lives and their own coping with trying to get well. So thank you for bringing that important point up.
Well, that was one of the reasons that I was drawn to you when we first met, was, you mirrored so beautifully what some of my own BS was going on. And, to see that in others and allow our own vulnerability to come out, there's a wonderful poem that I have kept up in front of me. Someone gave it to me, and they made a comment to me that has stuck with me. And they said, Corinne, if you saw yourself through my eyes, you would step into your greatness. And they gave me the gift of the Marianne Williamson poem called The Creed. So it has been a constant that's been in front of me, and it really is so true and a great reminder that when we do allow our own light to shine, we unconsciously give permission to other people to do the same. And it's not the idea of that we've got to be perfect, so it's a constant taking a look at. If we look at some of the greatest leaders that we've had out there, people that we've looked at that we felt were mentors that had that message that spoke to our heart, they're not perfect in every area. I can only imagine some of the stories that they had going on. I often wonder what Mother Teresa's BS was.
Right.
Did she have some funny little shadowy message that was going on behind while she was out there doing the most wonderful work that she did, or Martin Luther King or Abraham Lincoln? I can only imagine that, they had to have some kind of message going on, and at the same time they managed it and they got out there and they did their work. And I'm not saying...
And the other side of that is that despite, we just see their life through a keyhole, like Mother Teresa. You just see her life through a keyhole, and we forget that she is not immune to still being human.
That's right.
And that's a really, really important thing, because oftentimes we I feel like, hold ourselves up to people like Mother Teresa, and feel that there's something different than us, and that there's something wrong with us. And, they all have different struggles in life, and even though the struggles are different, the struggles, I like to say, are really all the same when you boil them all down. And nobody, doesn't matter if you're rich or famous or a saint, nobody escapes being human. I'd like to invite everybody that's listening. Corinne's got a great video on her website, too, which you'll get to see her and hear a little bit more about her message and what she brings to the table. But check out her website at www.edgeofchange.com and make sure you get her leadership assessment form and figure out what kind of leader you are. And this doesn't matter whether or not you're a corporate executive or a stay-at-home mom. Leadership is a skill that all of us need help developing, and coaching and getting a mentor to help you not only with the relationships within your family, but with outside your family. Learning as much as you can to develop that skill will serve you in so many different ways. And Corinne, I'd like to thank you for your time today, your wisdom and your kindness. I think you're just a real special person, and I hope that you've enjoyed the talk as well.
Thank you for having me. I really do feel honored that you took the time to just talk with me. And that's what has felt so great, is you do also have that wonderful ability to create that safe space for people to open up and get vulnerable. And with the work that you do, that is so needed. So thank you. Thank you for bringing me on.
Well, thank you, Corinne. Again, that's www.edgeofchange.com. I sure would love your feedback and your comments about this interview and also Corinne's work in general. Here's to our good health. I'm Marika Hamilton.
Marika Hamilton is the founder of Dealing with Healing, an organization formed to help support those dealing with a health crisis and to encourage and guide others that want to be proactive with their health. Marika is a wife and mother of two, an entrepreneur, and survived stage 3 cancer by taking an alternative approach. You can take advantage of Marika's experience and fast-track your ability to heal and stay healthy. Marika offers one-on-one coaching, group coaching, interviews, and speaking engagements. For more information on Marika's services, please visit www.dealingwithhealing.com and schedule a complimentary 30-minute consultation and download your own copy of 7 Tips to Accelerated Health.